You know, sometimes to really grasp the big picture, you have to zoom way in and focus on a single frame. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're looking at just one day, February 4th, 2026, to try and understand the real state of our world. Okay, let's just jump right into the single biggest headline that really shook the world today. The new START Nuclear Treaty. Yeah, the very last arms control pact between the United States and Russia officially expired. And just like that, a 50-year era of these carefully built limits on the world's most dangerous weapons, it just came to an end. And that, of course, brings us to the one question that is on literally everyone's mind. So, what happens now? Without those guardrails that we've had for decades, are we stepping into a new and, honestly, much more dangerous era? It's a huge question, and it's going to hang over every other story we're about to look at. So, to make sense of this pretty critical day, we've broken our explainer down into 5 key areas. We're going to start with that ticking nuclear clock. Then we'll look at the big global power plays, zoom in on the flashpoints and diplomacy, turn our focus to crises at home, and then finish up with what I'm calling humanity's enduring beat. All right, let's dive into the most significant story of the day, the end of the last major nuclear arms pact, and, the world's immediate scramble to figure out what comes next. So, what exactly was this New START treaty? Well, for decades, it was a cornerstone of global stability. It was the last formal agreement that put a cap on the number of deployed nuclear warheads for both the US and Russia. So its expiration, this is not just some political footnote, it is a massive, historic turning point. The reaction to this was, well, immediate. You had this mix of public fear and very private diplomacy. While all the headlines were screaming about a new arms race, behind the scenes, a totally different kind of balancing act was already starting. The US and Russia quickly announced they were holding emergency talks in Oman, basically trying to find some new path toward what they're calling strategic stability. Now, this nuclear fallout didn't happen in a vacuum, right? The uncertainty it creates just ripples outwards. So while the US and Russia were grappling with the end of the treaty, other major powers were making their own strategic moves on the global chessboard, really shoring up their alliances. And this slide just captures it perfectly, the two poles of global influence right now. On one side, you have this virtual meeting between Russia's Putin and China's Xi. They're reaffirming their strategic partnership on security and energy. And then on the other side, you've got a handshake between the US and India, sealing a major trade deal. It's pretty clear, in a world without those old nuclear certainties, solidifying these economic and military blocks is more critical than ever. But it wasn't just about the superpowers. Diplomacy was happening at all sorts of levels. Here we're seeing Colombia's president meeting with President Trump in Washington. The goal here was to repair ties, and it just goes to show that even as these major blocks are solidifying, individual nations are constantly navigating their own very complex relationships. Okay, so let's zoom in from those high-level meetings to the really tense realities on the ground. This is where the friction of global power plays out in real time, for better and for worse. In the middle of all this tension, there was a huge glimmer of hope. In the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which has been going on for 4 years now, a major prisoner exchange actually happened. 314 people are going home. It's just a powerful reminder that even in the most dug-in conflicts, diplomacy can still achieve real human results. But on this very same day, we saw a starkly different reality. While diplomacy was freeing some people, conflict was claiming others. Reports came out of Gaza citing that at least 21 Palestinians, and that includes children, were killed in Israeli airstrikes. It's just a tragic illustration of how peace and violence can exist side by side. And the tension didn't stop there. Over in the Arabian Sea, the U.S. Navy shot down an Iranian drone, saying it aggressively approached one of their carriers. This incident is just another flashpoint, another stark reminder of how fragile the balance of power really is in these critical regions. So far, we've been looking outward, at international affairs. But what happens inside a country's borders is just as important. These domestic stories, they reveal the internal pressures that really shape how nations act on the world stage. In the U.S., a huge story was the massive restructuring over at the Washington Post. We're talking about 300 journalists. That's a third of the staff being laid off. And this isn't just a story about one newspaper. It's a real snapshot of the economic pressures and big shifts that are impacting some of our most vital institutions. Today also brought the definitive legal end to a really shocking event in recent American history. Ryan Routh, the man who tried to assassinate Donald Trump, was sentenced to life in prison with absolutely no possibility of parole. A final, stark verdict. And of course, crises can also come from nature. In northern Japan, record-breaking snowfall led to a rising death toll of 35, with hundreds more injured. It's a really somber reminder of the power of the natural world and the very real human cost of these extreme weather events. So beyond all the big headlines of geopolitics and crises, the pulse of humanity it beats on. So for our final section, let's look at the stories from this one day that remind us of that enduring rhythm. The acts of compassion, the moments of controversy, and the celebrations that form the backdrop of all of our lives. On the side of compassion, a brand new humanitarian fund was launched to combat the spreading famine in Sudan. And just look at these numbers. $500 million pledged by the UAE, another $200 million from the US. That's a massive international effort to address a truly devastating human crisis. And then you have the pulse of modern controversy. Tech mogul Elon Musk made headlines by calling the Prime Minister of Spain a tyrant on social media. It's just such a perfect snapshot of our era, isn't it? Where the worlds of technology, big personalities, and international politics all just collide in a single post. And finally, a reminder of the events that can bring us all together. The 2026 Winter Olympics officially kicked off in Italy, a global celebration of sport. And at the same time, the world observed World Cancer Day, creating a united front in the fight against disease, with a real focus on the promise of new technologies like AI. So there it is. A nuclear treaty expires, while a prisoner exchange gives families hope. A trade deal gets signed, while a drone gets shot down. A newspaper lays off hundreds of people, while the Olympics begin. One single day, 15 different stories. The real question is, when you put them all together like this, what kind of picture does it really paint about the world we're all building for tomorrow?